Hi, everybody. Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. I am Diane Brady, Assistant Managing Editor, sitting with another Assistant Managing Editor, Steve Bertoni, who just wrote an incredible story about Ryan Breslow 2.0. Talk about love.
Well, Diane, thanks for having me, in which you have to be more specific because we can talk about this for hours. I'm still trying to figure out love.
So he has launched a wellness. I know that there's something to a psilocybin. This is, by the way, the founder of Bolt, who's still being involved with Bolt. And now he has got a new wellness startup that you wrote about. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but let's just start with what exactly is this startup, and is it different from what's out there already in the marketplace?
Well, the thing with Ryan is it's never boring and it's always different. Love is just starting out now. It hasn't launched yet, so it's still very in early stages. It's probably two parts. The first part is going to be a kind of like a name brand, direct-to-consumer supplement, or maybe even psychedelic therapy brand and consumer brand. The more interesting part, or the more, I guess, creative part for now, is they want to launch basically a way to crowdfund studies for all these debates that are out there. He argues that pharmaceutical companies only study only molecules they can make money off.
Which is a fair point.
Which is fair,
right?
He's like saying, you can't. Pfizer is not going to do a study on parsley because they can never make money off parsley. He wants to basically create a DAO, which is a decentralized decentralized autonomous organization, I believe.
Right.
Which I like to think of everyone as a digital...
Building on the blockchain, basically.
Building on the blockchain, but it's like a digital stock. So if you buy into the DAO, you have a piece of the project, and then you have a vote. So the idea is kind of like a Kickstarter for holistic medicine. So let's just say people buy a DAO and they get to vote. People get to propose, let's study coffee on strokes. Let's study...
Sounds like chaos.
Yes.
Chaos.
Let's study cinnamon on hypertension, whatever. And the DAO votes on the project. So the project with the most votes wins. And then they also get to choose how they're going to, which laboratory or which organization is going to do the study. And the idea is to take the money from the DAO and put it to prove if the cinnamon actually reduce your risk of diabetes. And they say, no, the tricky thing is, people have been debating this stuff for years, and it's not being ignored. Like the New England Journal of Medicine, or all these, even like the CDC or whatever, does these studies. And sometimes, is red wine good for you? How about white wine? How much? And they have conflicting results. He acknowledges that, but he says he just wants to get the hardcore data once and for all, find out. And that's part of love. It's a very long way to say it, but it's a very complex
It's interesting because, you know what, if I was listening to this, my question in my mind would be like, okay, who is Ryan Breslow? Because if you look at, first of all, let me first of all admit, the first time I met him with you, I thought he was somebody who was, working at the event that we were at. So he's not necessarily central casting when it comes to CEO founders.
Yes.
I think quite clearly somebody who loves alternative medicines and such. Talk about, first of all, the genesis of where he is today, which is Bolt.
Yes, this is a long story. So we met Ryan in the city, and Ryan is a young 28-year-old. When we met him, he was a paper billionaire with his payment company, Bolt. And the idea of Bolt was to basically bring one-click shopping, like you have on Amazon and Shopify, to the millions of other websites out there with the world, which is the same. You sign on once to Bolt, and it makes payment easier and checkout easier.
And very successful. It's a decacorn now, right?
It was raised at an $11 billion valuation in the spring, and obviously tech, especially a lot of fintech companies, the valuation has gone down with the crash, so we don't know what it's actually worth now. But yes, people were willing to give him money, $11 billion valuation. So he was in hardcore payments. And if you meet Ryan, he wears tie-dye shirts, even to black tie events. That's his thing. He has big earrings and looks like I don't know. He doesn't look like a buttoned-up CEO. But
not
that's
out of
his
place
advantage.
in Silicon
Not
Valley.
out of place. And then the interesting thing was he raised at that $11 billion valuation a few months ago, and then shortly after resigned as CEO, made his COO the new CEO, and his old CEO Maju is a executive from Amazon, so logistics guy, gets stuff done.
So now it's serious. They'll run. Now we've seen this trajectory before,
yes.
And we've also seen for some reason Jack Dorsey comes to mind, even though I know Jack Dorsey stayed in a CEO role. But this idea that in a way now you've got the resources to go pursue your passion projects, is that in essence what he's doing with Love?
In some ways, I think it's interesting. He said, I don't want to be a CEO anymore because what he wants to do is he wants to do big deals. He wants to be creative. He wants to do meetings, brainstorm, fundraise. I think we've been trained by people like Mark Zuckerberg or Spotify's Daniel Ek, or even going back to Microsoft with Bill Gates, where the founder then stays with the company and runs it from a garage, so to speak, to thousands of people. I mean, that's a rarity. I mean, most founders have a brain where they want to start up and do ideas and take big swings, but then they don't want to manage and grow a company.
Or they have venture capitalists who don't want them there, right? It's one or the other. Sometimes
or both.
It's like, well, in this case, he's continuing to stay on as, I guess, executive chairman, right?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And that's an interesting, that 1-2 punch we see a lot, frankly. What does it mean? Is it just simply that he remains the creative spirit that opens the doors, does the deals, is more the face of the brand at Bolt, and while he continues to pursue Love?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's
who doesn't pursue Love, by the way?
He's looking elsewhere for love. I think a lot of founders, again, they're amazing at the startup phase, but they frankly aren't ready when it's in a growth stage and suddenly it's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and managing and meetings and meetings and meetings. Like, their brain isn't for that. Like, I know I would go crazy with that. Like, running a 50-person startup and then running a 5,000-person startup that suddenly you want to IPO, that's a different skill set, and it's rare that people can do both. And Ryan and other folks now, and actually Ryan Peterson from Flexport just did this too, realized, like, for the company to get to the next spot, we need to bring in someone who's more of a professional manager, but they're staying on and they're still doing the stuff they want to do. They're still doing the big meetings, the big strategy, maybe creating big products, but they realize they're not the person to be doing the day-to-day. Some people can do that, but I think in the startup world, it used to be a big sense of pride, like, oh, I'm going to hurt my ego if I'm stepping down from CEO. But people like Ryan Breslow, Ryan Peterson are realizing, who knows what's going behind the scenes. But, like, you know what? It's okay. Like, I'm going to give up the reins for day-to-day. I'm going to stay on. And by the way, like, if you're looking monetary-wise, like, they're keeping the equity. And if someone can do it better and take all the headaches on,
right,
they're just going to get richer having more stuff. So he wants to jump to, he's very passionate about medicine. He said, he told me that his mom had some, cancer battles in the past. He himself had some health scares, and he's always into alternative medicine. He's for Western medicine in some cases, but he's also a big fan of, the more holistic, whether it's...
Well, he's on trend. He's on trend with that, certainly. And we've seen a lot of jurisdictions around the country that have now legalized psilocybins and hallucinogens. They're not always put in the same category. But I want to step back a second because the environment has changed for founders. You've covered founders for many years, and for most of the time, in recent memory, it has been up, up, up.
Yes.
There's still many opportunities for innovation, but now we've got inflation, concerns about recession. Certainly blockchain and crypto, different trajectory than it was last year.
It's a cold winter.
How are you finding in general the space? I mean, let's step away from Ryan a second. When you look at, do you feel that there's a different mindset among founders as a result of heading into an environment that the wind's blowing in your face more than blowing at your back?
It's a really interesting question, and it also depends on different tiers of companies and different tiers of founders. A lot of these folks who are in their 20s or even mid-30s have never seen this kind of environment, or if they did, they were 10, right? They didn't face it. So
most of us have never really seen it for the bulk of our careers, right?
100%. We've been very lucky. I mean, it's been very easy, like, calm seas, so to speak, for the last. But this is interesting. I think founders that have a real business, that they're making money, making cash flow, or they raised a ton of money and they have a lot of capital, as they say, like runway, basically, you can keep on doing your thing for years out. I think they're obviously they're tightening the belt a little bit, but they realize this is an awesome opportunity because there will be a rebound. And also, if some of their weaker competitors die away in the end, they'll be stronger coming out of it if they survive. Companies that had the high valuations, but they didn't have a lot of cash coming in, or maybe they were running out of money and they're going to have to desperately raise to survive, that's a whole other thing. So it's kind of a have and have nots, depending on the health of the business and depending on, frankly, the money they have in the bank.
So, Steve, I have to ask one other thing, which is I hate to put you in the psychologist chair, but you get a lot of people pitch you. We've seen many very successful founders, some flame out, some, go do other things. Have you noticed, with this generation, let's go back to Ryan, the particular skill sets or what it is is it just the business model you look at? Because venture capitalists always say that they're investing in the person. So what do you think? I don't know if you notice any particular traits of this generation coming up, and by that I mean sort of early millennials that are now hitting into those billionaire status. I'm going to rephrase that, but I want to get a sense. It feels like there's a different genotype that is coming to the helm now of business than even 10 years ago. Like I would put a difference between a Ryan Breslow and a Mark Zuckerberg. What do you think? Because you have these folks come, pitch you meet them every day. Any thoughts on that?
They're all different. And like Breslow, for example, he has a track record. So I spoke to some of his investors in Love, which is basically just an idea at this point. Like they're building it right now. But he raised at around $300 million. Like you and I can't do that. But the thing is, one of the investors says
investing in success.
He's done it before. And even though here's this 28-year-old guy that has like the big earrings and the tie-dye shirts, which I'm totally cool with. But again, it's not the stereotype. He's amazing.
Zuckerberg had his hoodie.
His hoodie, yes. But Breslow has proved he's amazing at raising money from top-tier venture capitalists. And at Bolt, he's hired, all his executives are industry veterans that have been very successful across Silicon Valley. So he's proven he's great at recruiting and he's great at raising money. And these investors told me, like, at this point, like, I'm just betting on Ryan. Like, we don't know what he's doing yet, but we know if he's going to put his mind to it, he's probably going to recruit great people and raise a ton of money. Is that going to be a successful company? Who knows? But in that case, they're betting on the person. I think a lot of the founders, someone was telling me one time, I think a great kind of way to think about this is 9 out of 10 startups are going to fail. Whether you're trying to whether you're going to open a corner pizza shop or you want to create the biggest pizza chain in the history of the world. So if you're going to fail anyway, why don't you go big and fail big instead of doing something small? So I think a lot of these folks, they think really big. They kind of push their goals probably too far. But in the past, it's been a great way to raise money, depending, again.
Well, does it scale, right?
Does it scale? The question. Exactly. How big can it be? And investors would rather give money to people with big, crazy ideas, especially at the early stage, because that's their job. Their job is to, put money on the roulette table, and they know that, half of them are going to fail fast. But if the other half go 1,000x, that makes careers.
Well,
but
psilocybin alternative medicine, not a bad place to be.
Not bad. But that, to be fair, that's one of the things. He also wants to study meditation, yoga, breath work, that kind of stuff. Multivitamins, you name it. So yeah, the psilocybin's always good for press and good for buzz, but it's not like he's starting a psychedelic company. But that might be one of the offerings.
Great. Well, more to come. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Diane.